Once a powerful CEO, Quang now finds himself toiling under the scorching sun as a construction worker. His hands blistered and his spirit shattered. Haunted by memories of his past success, he confides in Linda, the one person who sees beyond his brokenness. In her presence, he admits his exhaustion and his desperate longing for peace. Together, they dream of leaving behind the chaos, choosing instead a life of simplicity, tending animals, harvesting fruits, and healing in love. Don't miss this emotional journey. Subscribe now and join us as we step into Quang and Linda's heartfelt story. The scorching sun bore down on the construction site, casting long shadows across the half-finished walls and piles of bricks. Quang's shirt clung to his body, drenched with sweat, as he hauled yet another load of cement across the uneven ground. His arms trembled with fatigue, and his breath came in shallow bursts, but he forced himself to keep moving. Around him, the clang of metal, the sharp calls of foremen, and the constant grind of machinery filled the air, a harsh symphony that reminded him of the life he now lived. Each day was the same, rising before dawn, pushing his body to the limit under the relentless heat, and collapsing into bed with muscles aching and hands raw. His palms, once smooth and confident in a boardroom, were now rough, blistered, and scarred from gripping shovels and carrying bricks. Yet the physical exhaustion was nothing compared to the weight in his chest. At times, when he paused to wipe the sweat from his brow, Quang found his mind drifting back to a past that felt like a dream. Once he had stood tall in tailored suits, commanding attention with every word he spoke. Once he had been the man at the head of the table, leading meetings in glass-walled offices high above the city streets. He remembered the respectful nods, the handshakes, the admiration in people's eyes. He had been a CEO, decisive, admired, and powerful. Now, he was just another laborer among dozens, indistinguishable in his dust-stained clothes and worn-out boots. The contrast was cruel, like a mirror showing him a stranger he barely recognized. That night, when the day's work was finally over, Quang trudged back to the small, dimly lit room he rented near the site. The walls were bare, the mattress thin, and the air stifling. He sat heavily on the edge of the bed, his shoulders slumping forward, and for the first time in weeks, he allowed himself to feel the full force of his emotions. Tears welled in his eyes before spilling freely down his cheeks. He pressed his hands to his face, ashamed of his own weakness, but the memories would not let him go. They came rushing back, the taste of triumph when his company first hit its milestone, the late nights filled with vision and ambition, the applause at corporate events where his name had been celebrated. All of it now seemed like a different lifetime, as though it belonged to someone else. He cried not only for what he had lost, but for the man he feared he had become. The weight of failure sat heavily on him, crushing his spirit more than the grueling labor ever could. He wondered if anyone from his past would even recognize him now, covered in dust and sweat, his once proud posture bent beneath invisible burdens. He wondered if he could recognize himself. Each tear that fell was heavy with regret, yet also tinged with longing for peace, for meaning, for a place where he could simply breathe without the pressure of expectations. Outside, the city hummed with its usual chaos, indifferent to the broken man inside the little room. But within Quang, a silent storm raged, one that no one else could see. Alone in the quiet, he let the tears flow, hoping that perhaps, by releasing his sorrow, he could find the strength to face another day. The next evening, unable to bear the suffocating silence of his small room any longer, Quang sought the only person he trusted enough to share his pain with, Linda. She had always been there, quietly present in his life, neither judging nor questioning, but simply offering her calm presence whenever he faltered. That night, he walked slowly toward her place, his steps heavy as though every thought weighed him down. The air was cooler than usual, a gentle breeze rustling the leaves along the narrow street. And for the first time all day, he felt a hint of relief, knowing he was on his way to see her. Linda's home glowed softly in the warm light of a single lamp. The moment she opened the door, her kind eyes seemed to read the fatigue etched deep into his face. She didn't need to ask what was wrong. His slumped shoulders and weary expression spoke louder than words. She simply gestured for him to come inside, leading him toward the small wooden table in the corner of her living room. The scent of chamomile tea lingered in the air, soothing and gentle, wrapping him in comfort he hadn't realized he was desperate for. For a while, Quang sat in silence, staring at the steam rising from the cup Linda had placed before him. His hands trembled slightly as he held it, not from the day's physical labor, but from the turmoil raging inside him. Finally, with a voice heavy and unsteady, he spoke. "Linda," he began, his eyes fixed on the floor. "I don't know how much longer I can keep going like this. Every morning I wake up exhausted, and every night I fall asleep wondering who I've become. I thought I was strong enough to handle it all, but I'm breaking." His words cracked, almost a whisper, as though admitting his weakness made it more real. Linda listened without interruption, her gaze never leaving him. She didn't rush to comfort him with cliches or empty reassurances. Instead, she let the silence between his sentences breathe, creating a space safe enough for him to spill everything he had been holding back. Encouraged by her quiet presence, Quang continued, his tone raw with vulnerability. "I used to think success was everything. Power, money, influence. But now, even if I tried to go back, I don't think it would heal this emptiness. I feel like I'm chasing shadows. Maybe what I need isn't more achievements, but less. Less noise, less pressure, less pretending." He rubbed his temples as if the weight of his confession might crush him. For a moment, the only sound was the ticking of the clock on the wall and the faint hum of the evening outside. Then Linda reached across the table, resting her hand gently over his. Her touch was steady, grounding, as though silently telling him he was not alone. "You don't have to carry this by yourself, Quang," she said softly, her voice filled with sincerity. "It's okay to admit that you're tired. It's okay to want something different." Those words sank into him like rain on parched soil. He had never realized how desperately he needed someone to give him permission to step away, to let go of the impossible standards he had once lived by. His throat tightened, and for the first time in a long while, he allowed himself to breathe deeply without the invisible weight pressing against his chest. He looked into Linda's eyes, and for a fleeting second, he saw the outline of a life he had longed for but never dared to imagine. A life of peace, of simplicity, of belonging. And in that moment, though the world outside remained chaotic and demanding, inside her warm little home, Quang felt the faint stirrings of hope return. The quiet lingered between them, soft and fragile, as if the world outside had paused to listen. Quang's gaze drifted toward the window, where the night sky shimmered faintly with scattered stars. His voice, when it finally broke the silence, was low and hesitant, as though he were afraid the words might dissolve if spoken too boldly. "Linda," he murmured, "what if, what if I came to live at your farm for a while, just for some time, to rest, to breathe again? I don't want to keep drowning in this life that doesn't feel like mine anymore." Linda tilted her head slightly, her eyes studying his face with quiet intensity. She saw the man who once stood with unshakable confidence, now laid bare in his vulnerability, searching for an anchor. Slowly, a smile touched her lips, not of amusement, but of deep compassion. If that's what your heart is telling you, then maybe it's exactly what you need. The farm has always been a place of peace, and you wouldn't have to face it alone. Her words warmed him in a way no success or applause ever had. For the first time in months, Quang felt a flicker of genuine relief. He closed his eyes and allowed himself to imagine it, waking to the sound of roosters instead of alarm clocks, walking barefoot through dew-soaked grass instead of concrete dust, breathing in the sweetness of ripe fruit instead of choking on exhaust fumes. He pictured evenings by Linda's side, watching the sun melt into golden fields, the two of them sharing laughter without the weight of titles or expectations. The vision was so vivid it made his chest ache with longing. "Can you really see me there, Linda?" he asked, his voice soft, almost childlike in its uncertainty. "I'm no longer the man I used to be. I wouldn't know the first thing about tending animals or harvesting crops." She chuckled lightly, shaking her head. "You don't have to be perfect. Life on the farm isn't about being flawless. It's about learning, growing, and finding joy in simple things. You'll see, even feeding the animals or picking fruit from the orchard can feel like a small kind of healing. And besides," she added, squeezing her hand reassuringly, "I'd be there with you. We'd figure it out together." That promise, uncomplicated yet profound, settled into Quang's heart like a balm. He realized then that what he craved was not a return to who he once was, but a chance to rebuild himself differently, more gently. With Linda, there was no need to prove anything, no stage to perform on, no masks to wear. Just the two of them, and a world stripped back to its essentials: earth, sky, and love. That thought stirred something within him, a fragile but undeniable hope. For the first time in what felt like forever, Quang allowed himself to believe that happiness did not have to be tied to boardrooms or bank accounts. It could be found in the rhythm of daily chores, in the laughter shared over a simple meal, and the silent companionship of a woman who truly saw him. As the night deepened, Quang felt a sense of peace he had almost forgotten existed. The exhaustion of his laborer's life, the bitterness of his memories, the heavy cloak of regret, all of it seemed lighter now, softened by the possibility of a new beginning. He squeezed Linda's hand, his eyes shining with quiet determination. "Then let's do it," he whispered. "Let's build that life together." And in that moment, surrounded by the gentle glow of her home, Quang knew that his story was not ending in loss, but beginning anew, with hope, with healing, and with the promise of a life lived in balance beside the woman who had never stopped believing in him.
Hello, xin chào tất cả các khán giả của kênh Lý Tử Ninja Review. Vậy là trong tập phim ngày hôm nay, sau những ngày làm thợ xây vất vả và áp lực cùng với áp lực khi mà bị phá sản, giờ đây Quang cảm thấy mình đang bị mất cân bằng trong cuộc sống. Anh quyết định sẽ về trang trại với Linda một thời gian để cân bằng lại cuộc sống và giúp Linda chăm sóc trang trại, sống cuộc sống tự do tự tại, đơn giản hạnh phúc giữa đời thường, ờ, để trước khi bước vào con đường khởi nghiệp lại sự nghiệp. Liệu rằng quyết định này của Quang có đúng đắn hay không? Tất cả sẽ được hé lộ vào các tập tiếp theo, sẽ được phát sóng hàng ngày trên kênh Lý Tưởng Linda Review. Cảm ơn các bạn rất nhiều đã luôn dành tình cảm cho kênh của mình. Xin chào và hẹn gặp lại các bạn ở các tập tiếp theo. Bye bye!